talking about Boogie Ellis a few minutes ago, and obviously we always find ways to talk about the Sacramento Kings. Jesse asked the question. I thought it was interesting because I posed some questions about Keegan Murray, Keon Ellis, growth, if this player does this, if this player does that, so on and so on. But in terms of something to prove, does Kevin Herter have the most to prove this season, this upcoming season?
Most to prove off the top of my head, I would say yes. Um, he's got to fight for minutes. He's got to fight for a spot in the rotation, um, and he's got to prove that he's I don't want to say worthy, but like that he can be trusted by Mike Brown to keep up the pace of what they're already establishing of guys that we expect, like DeRozan, Monk, all these guys to do. When Herter gets in there, that can't be a drop off. So yeah, I think for this particular team, not as like an NBA player or something like that, but for this particular team, he probably does have the most to prove on the team. I'd agree with that. What you think?
Yeah, I think he does because I think most people, I don't want to say everybody, but I think most people don't believe that that guy last year is who Kevin Herter is as a player.
Hmm.
Like that was his worst year as a pro. The question is, do you believe what he was the year before?
Right.
Do you believe that that's Kevin Herter? And if that's not Kevin Herter, who is? Like which version? We've seen two distinctly different versions of Kevin Herter in a Sacramento Kings uniform.
Mm,
Is he one, the other, or is he somewhere in between?
mm.
Now it's easy to say he's somewhere in between, but it didn't feel like that first year he was doing anything that's like, oh my God, this is just incredible. He's playing over his head. It never felt like that at all. Whereas last year, repeatedly, it felt like, man, he can't hit nothing.
Right.
Like he went games and games. It felt like at times he went weeks
Mm,
um, without being able to consistently hit a shot.
right.
And it got to the point where we were begging Kevin Herter to do anything, rebound the ball,
Seriously.
get a steal, grab a. I would get excited. Oh, Kevin Herter hit a loose ball. I love it. Like
That's
his shot
no,
was
that's
so
really
bad,
what
you
happened.
just wanted him to be able to contribute something. And every little thing he did, it was like, maybe that'll do it.
Right.
Maybe that'll get him going. And unfortunately, nothing did before his season came to that really unfortunate end. Um, but yeah, that he definitely has a lot to prove, but I don't know what I'm looking for him to prove. I don't know that I just made the argument. I don't feel like he played over his head 2 years ago, but I also don't know if that's going to be him,
Mm,
especially with DeMar here
yeah.
and, Keegan being a little bit better than he was that first year as well, and hopefully being even a little bit better than he was last year. So it's like Kevin Herter almost has to find himself on like a different team.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like a different version of the Sacramento
hmm,
Kings.
hmm.
He's going to have to find himself with a more seasoned Keegan Murray, and obviously you've added DeMar DeRozan here now, and you got De'Aaron and Domas that are in lockstep the whole way. Harrison's gone. Things are just a little bit different than they were.
That's a good way of putting it. Finding himself on a different version of this team. I I think that Kevin Herter is somebody that obviously we've talked about a number of times can be part of a rotation of a really good team. Like I think he has that capabilities. But for what he does at a high level, which is score and all this other stuff, it almost feels like that's not what this team needs. His strength isn't what this team needs. So, I take that back. I think they need spot up shooting, and I think he can provide that. But is it safe to say that more importantly, they need like him to step up and show some toughness on the defensive end, or do you think that's not a that's if he's making shots, nobody's worried about
You
that?
said more importantly?
Hmm.
No, I don't think that's more important,
So his number one priority is just making shots.
in my opinion. Yeah,
Mm,
because yeah, I know it seems like an eternity ago, but I feel like I know what Mike's looking for. We all know what Mike's looking for. He will tell us exhaustively what he's looking for.
Mhm.
But I said this last year, and I still believe it to be true. Fans' frustrations with Kevin Huerter's defense was magnified because he couldn't score.
Mm.
If Kevin Huerter was averaging 15 points and doing everything that he was doing on the defensive end, virtually just identical to what he did last year, but he was hitting those shots, if the conversation would have been there, it would have been a whole lot different.
I agree.
And I'm not even positive it would have been there because it that's the superpower, as you called it, would have looked different. It didn't look like they had it last year.
Right.
It got zapped. And you bring back the Marvel conversation from the first part of the show. Like they lost a little bit of what made them special, and they kept trying to find it all year. And we blamed it on, oh, the intensity on defense is taken away from the offense, and so on and so forth. When really that, and maybe there is some level of truth to that. Kevin Huerter scoring 15 points a game. We're talking 5 more points a game. This is an entirely different basketball team. The conversation about what they're doing is not there. And so, do you want Kevin Huerter to step up, be tougher on the defensive end? Sure. But if you're giving me a choice of I can have one or the other, nah. Give me the dude who hits shots.
I agree.
Give me the dude who hits shots 10 times out of 10.
So the question is, with this group, is that good enough to get him on the floor? Like, is he even like if he's not bringing that to the table and the defense, and it's just about hitting shots, will he even get an opportunity to get that look? Because if he's not there, it's kind of. I think his best opportunity might be at a small forward spot. They may go small or something like that. But yeah.
So let's try this. Right now, today, who does Coach Caraway pick to start at the 2?
Malik Monk.
Okay. So, and tell me if this line of thinking is wrong. You going Malik Monk kind of fades out the defensive thing. Because if your big concern was defense, you're not starting Malik or Kevin. You're starting Keon, and that's what you did last year. So why is Kevin Huerter being held to the standard of having to do something on the defensive end or being tougher on the defensive end? And I'm not saying Malik's not tough. I'm saying if Malik shoots 15% or from 3 or whatever, struggles for whatever reason on the offensive end, whatever he's doing on the defensive end is going to be magnified.
Yeah, he's a better defender than Kevin Huerter.
And I mean, the whole team is a better defender than Kevin Huerter,
and he's a better creator. He's got some synergy with Sabonis on that pick and roll and just creating for others. He's better at that. So, and it goes also to your point, like when Huerter was averaging 15 points a game, this wasn't an issue. He wasn't last year, so it's an issue. The Malik, if he's just an average defender, but is averaging 15 points per game, bringing the energy and all this other stuff, it's not going to matter. Just like it didn't matter when Kevin was doing it that way. So, and I think Malik is just a better player too. I think he's a better player than Kevin Huerter.
Okay.
But the killer is, and this is where I thought you were going to go too. If I go like offense, so this is also the way it kind of gets laid out, and it's not this exact. We're just kind of having a conversation. But say I started Kevin Huerter, that means Malik Monk would be the backup. Am I going to go offense? Lack of defense? Or do I need to go offense and I need somebody to come in there and give a defensive punch? That's where Keon comes into play. Well, if Huerter's starting, you ain't going to say Huerter and then Keon. You're going to go Malik, then Keon. And that's where it's like, Huerter, where does Huerter get in there? I think you can get away with Huerter being like your backup 3
DeMar.
kind of, or three guard rotation type deal. I think you can get away with that.
I think you could play Keon, Malik, and Kevin for stretches, or De'Aaron, Keon, and Kevin for stretches.
Yeah.
Like when you're basically very long-winded way of saying when you sub DeMar DeRozan, I think there's a lot of things that you could do with Kevin Huerter there.
I agree. I think there's room and there's plenty of time for Kevin Huerter on this team. I do. It's just going to be in a reduced.
But he has to show something somewhere,
Yeah.
and that's where like the idea of pressure comes from. Is we know he struggles on the defensive end. The last we saw him, he was really struggling on the offensive end. You better come in with one on point, and asking him to come in and be asking or expecting him to come in and be an elevated defensive player, I think is bordering on silly. Like, you can ask him to be better. You can ask him to be better than what he was. And I think he absolutely can be better than what he was last year. But I'm not sure that it's something everyone will notice. And maybe everyone doesn't matter. If Mike notices, that's all that matters. But I think we're talking like marginally better. The jump is on the offensive end. And that's where it has to be, especially if you're talking about a limited role or a more limited role. A more limited role means limited touches, limited shots. That means you've got to take advantage of those. If you're not taking nearly as many shots as you were the year before, but you're averaging 8 to 10 points per game, that's a win for everybody involved. The issue becomes if you're taking the same amount of shots you took the last 2 years and you're averaging 8 to 10 points. That's a loss for everybody involved. And this time, this is where Kevin might. It's hard to believe, but that's the only situation where I see Kevin falling out of the rotation.
Let me ask you another question on top of that, though. Are we all doing a little bit too much assuming that Keon Ellis is in that rotation like that?
Yeah. Like in the rotation? No, I don't think it's crazy to assume he's playing.
I don't think it should be.
I think it's crazy to assume he's starting.
But it could be a situation where maybe those guys still look at Kevin Huerter as just a better player at this point in his career than Keon. And now you're looking at some combination of like what I talked about, Malik starting, Kevin backing it up, or vice versa. And we all just kind of, because they need defense and he was a great defender, we're thinking that Keon is going to be part of that, but he might be the odd man out a little bit.
If that's the case, my preference would be Mike Brown never talk again. If that winds up happening, then I don't want a Mike Brown press conference. I don't want a Mike Brown post game. I don't want a Mike Brown pregame. I just want Mike to wave to us and go sit down. Because all we heard last year was defense and this and that and we got to be stronger here and we got to do this. That's all we heard. And you searched. You could make the argument you ruined Kevin Huerter last year trying to find a guy to do this, and you finally found him. And for him to not be in the rotation next year after you got exactly what you were looking for, that'd be crazy to me.